Welcome back, and thank you for joining me on a topic that just by our phone lines, by people contacting us, is not talked about enough. And we're talking about mental health. In particular, we're talking about a landmark UK study calling into question the use of a reliance, should I say, on antidepressants. Often, I mean, throughout, for a very, very long time, people are told, take this antidepressant because what it does is raise your serotonin level. Low serotonin levels, we have been told, or it's been intimated, is what causes depression. I've been talking with Professor Joanna Moncrief, Professor of Critical and Social Psychiatry, and now joining us as well is Dr. Jonathan Raskin, who's Professor of Psychology and Counselor Education at the State University of New York. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us. As I said right at the beginning, and I want to do this from starting blocks, as it were. I've had a long alternative career with the World Psychiatric Association and being involved in mental health, reshaping workforces, etc. Would I be right in saying it's been known for quite a long time amongst especially psychotherapists and many psychiatrists look at the World Psychiatric Association, that serotonin levels is not what depression is hinged upon?
Certainly. Most practitioners, I think, are aware. I would say all practitioners, because of what actually happens. We don't diagnose people's depression by taking a measure of serotonin. We diagnose people's depression by looking at how they're acting, how they're feeling, what they tell us. And then we do our best at that point to try to help them. And antidepressants are one thing that we have in our toolkit. They're not necessarily a magic pill, although they're often marketed as such. And so I think mental health professionals are pretty aware of the limits of antidepressants, and they use them when clients want them and when they aren't sure what else to do.
Now, you said when clients want them, and I'm British and I commute between the two countries. I'm living in the United States. One thing that Britain doesn't have as much as the US has is what you said, when clients want them. Now, that want, I'd say, in the US, I mean, I'm amazed by the advertisements on TV for antidepressants, you know, mixed in with Burger King and buying a new car and what have you. So that message is very much sold. Joanna, I think it would be safe to say in the UK, it's probably more word of mouth or just people, this message out there that, you know, depression is because you've got low serotonin levels, and pill X will raise your serotonin levels and banish the blues. Those are very much drivers. So here's the question. Sorry, Joanna, you were going to say.
So yeah, you're right. We don't have pharmaceutical advertisements, but members of the medical profession in this country have been telling people that depression is due to a serotonin deficiency or a chemical imbalance in the news, on television, even in the last few months. So I'm afraid that, you know, mental health professionals and health professionals generally do sometimes give out that message, even though, as Jonathan rightly says, most of them probably know that it's not as straightforward as that.
Mm-hmm.
So the question comes next, obviously. Why would they do such a thing? I'm trying to forget the fact that I know lots of drug companies have hotel rooms in very nice places for instance, Barbados, etc., for, you know, those who prescribe the most of pill X, Y, and Z. I'm not saying directly that might be a cause, but let me just ask, why would anybody from the medical profession, if, as what you say, Jonathan, is right, most medical professionals know this, why would they still be giving out that information?
Well, that's a really good question. Sorry, Jonathan.
Yeah, well, in the United States, at least, most antidepressants are not prescribed by psychiatrists. They're prescribed by people's family physicians. And I think a lot of times people don't realize that. So somebody isn't feeling well, you know, they're down in the dumps, they're depressed, they go to their family doctor. And I imagine at least some of the time the family doctor sort of says, well, maybe we should refer you for psychotherapy. But a lot of people don't want that. There's stigma attached to that. And there's probably pressure on the family physician, can you do something for me, doc? And they end up prescribing an antidepressant. But most people don't get their antidepressants in the United States from psychiatrists. They do it from their
that's the same in the UK. But I just wanted to pick up on Trisha's point and just say that the pharmaceutical industry, the drug companies, did massively promote this message back in the 1990s and the noughties. There were a lot of advertisements aimed at medical professionals and stuff on the internet, that the public could access, even in places where there wasn't direct-to-consumer advertising. So the message has, started really with the pharmaceutical industry and then has just sort of developed a life of its own.
And got out there. Now, I just do want to say to people who are listening, watching, and as I said before, I don't know if you heard me say that, Jonathan, that our switchboard has gone, is lit up. People really want to talk about this and are concerned. I don't know if you join me in saying if you are on antidepressants and you are affected by this, please do not just stop taking your antidepressants, because I, for one, can tell you from personal experience that in itself, and you touched upon this earlier, Joanna, you realize how much of a drug they are if you do that, because the effects of withdrawing from antidepressants quickly are horrific, are they not?
Absolutely, really good point. So people really must not do that. And if they do, after reflection, decide that they want to try and come off, that they should do that very slowly and carefully and with professional support.
Yeah, I concur.
It takes something like 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah.
But longer than that.
So then... Yeah, exactly. And I think I did it in about 6 weeks. And it is, for one thing, I don't think anyone withdrawing from antidepressants should be allowed to even drive. So the bottom line is, what happens next? It's going to come to pharmaceutical companies to reply to this. And I'm sure everyone will be waiting to see what they say, because they can't really counter this because they almost know themselves. What do you think is the next step in this, Jonathan?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think what you're doing here today, disseminating this information, is incredibly important. People need to know what the limits of our knowledge are when it comes to depression and antidepressants. And I think spreading the word, we've had, as Joanna mentioned, we've had many years of messaging that says, we have this very simple brain chemistry explanation for depression. And I think making people understand that it's much more complicated than that, and that human experience can't be reduced to one single neurotransmitter level in the brain. And I think if you start to talk to people about it, they understand that. So I think disseminating this information and talking about it as you're doing here this morning or this afternoon in the UK makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I would absolutely.
I just want to thank you both. You'd agree, and I'm sure we will be talking to you more, because I'm just seeing from the number of calls, what have you, we haven't talked about it enough, and that is in part because of stigma. And I hope by just having this start of a conversation, we start to chip away at that. So thank you both for your time, and as I said before, I've no doubt we will be talking again soon. That's Professor Joanna Moncrief, Professor of Critical and Social Psychiatry in the UK, and Dr. Jonathan Raskin in the States, Professor of Psychology and Counselor Education at the State University of New York. Keep your calls coming. Lots of them. You know the number. As I said, lots of people have got involved. The question is, have you taken, and what's your experience when it comes to antidepressants? You're with Trisha Goddard here on Talk TV. More after the news headlines.